I never thought my life could change in one single class period, but it did. It started with me raising my hand, begging for help, and ended with me waking up in a hospital bed, told that I had died for 90 seconds. The truth is, I wasn't supposed to be alive to tell you this story, and if I hadn't fought back, if I hadn't stood up against the system, maybe no one would have ever known what really happened behind that locked classroom door. I was 17 the first time I realized adults could be just as cruel as kids. You see, I always thought teachers were supposed to protect us, to step in when things went wrong, to be the safe person in the room. But on that day, the day that changed everything, my own teacher became the one who locked the door and nearly locked me out of my own life. It was a regular Tuesday morning, the kind of day that feels ordinary until you look back and realize it was anything but. I had math class right after lunch, and honestly, I dreaded it. Not because of the numbers, but because of the teacher, Mrs. Green. Sharp eyes, tighter bun, and a voice that could slice through the air like broken glass. She wasn't just strict. She seemed to enjoy making us squirm. And for me, a kid with epilepsy, that meant she saw me as the weak one. I'll never forget the way she would roll her eyes whenever I had to step out to the nurse's office, like I was some kind of burden, like my condition was an excuse. But that day, it wasn't just an eye roll. The warning sign started halfway through her lecture, numbers blurred on the whiteboard. The hum of the fluorescent lights above became unbearably loud, like bees buzzing inside my skull. My chest tightened, and a cold wave of dread swept through me. Oh no, not here, not now. I raised my hand, my voice shaky. Mrs. Green, I think I'm about to, but she didn't even look at me. Not now. We're in the middle of an example. You can wait. My classmates turned, some smirking, some whispering. I felt the heat of embarrassment crawl up my neck. My hand trembled as I tried again. I need to go to the nurse, please. That's when she snapped. Enough of your drama. Sit down and pay attention. You're not special. Those words. They hit harder than the seizure that was already clawing its way up through me. My vision tunneled. The room tilted sideways. I remember gasps from a few kids, the sound of a pencil dropping, and then darkness. When I woke, I was on the cold floor. My body felt like it had been crushed by a truck. My mouth tasted like blood where I must have bitten my tongue. I could hear whispers around me, a mix of fear and cruelty. Is she dead? She peed herself. Don't touch her. You'll catch something. But above all that noise was silence from the one person who should have helped. Mrs. Green wasn't calling the nurse. She wasn't kneeling by my side. She was standing by the door, watching. And then, click, the sound of the classroom lock sliding into place. She turned to the class and said, as if I weren't lying there seizing on the floor, "Everyone stay in your seats. She'll stop eventually." Do you know what it feels like to hear that? To realize that the adult in charge of your safety has decided you're not worth saving. I couldn't move. My body was still jerking, my head banging lightly against the tile. But inside, I was screaming, "Help me, please. Don't let me die here." Minutes stretched into forever. I don't know if it was 2 or 5 or 10. Seizures blur time into something unrecognizable. But I do know this. I heard the pounding of fists on the door, another teacher's voice yelling from the hallway, the sudden clatter as the lock was forced open. Then, chaos, hands lifting me, the wail of an ambulance siren. Mrs. Green's sharp protest. She exaggerates. She's fine. She does this for attention. And then, blackness again. The next time I opened my eyes, I was staring at bright hospital lights. My mum was there, clutching my hand so tightly it hurt. Her mascara had run down her cheeks. My dad stood behind her, fists clenched, shaking with anger. The doctor's words cut through the fog in my brain like knives. She flatlined for 90 seconds. If she had been brought in any later, she might not be here at all. 90 seconds. a minute and a half of my life stolen, simply because someone refused to unlock a door. I lay there, too weak to speak, but my mind burned with one thought. They can't just get away with this. She can't just walk back into school tomorrow like nothing happened. But here's the thing about the truth. People don't always want to hear it. And when my parents confronted the school, we realized quickly that the fight ahead of us was going to be even uglier than the seizure itself, because Mrs. Green had already started spinning her story, and the school was all too eager to believe her. If you've ever believed schools always protect students, let me shatter that illusion right now. Because after I nearly died on that classroom floor, after doctors said I was seconds away from permanent brain damage, the people who should have defended me, the school board, the principal, even some teachers, chose silence, or worse, lies. The morning after I got out of the hospital, I sat at our kitchen table, wrapped in a blanket. My head still throbbed, and my muscles ached from the seizure, but none of that hurt as much as knowing I had to go back. Back to the same school, back to the same woman who had locked the door. Mom slammed her coffee mug onto the table. You're not stepping foot in that building until they explain themselves. Not after what she did. Dad nodded, jaw tight. We'll demand answers today. They can't sweep this under the rug. And for a moment, I believed him. For a moment, I thought justice was simple. You almost die, adults step up, and the wrongdoer faces consequences. I couldn't have been more wrong. When we walked into the principal's office, Mrs. Green was already there. Her hair was perfectly neat, her arms folded, her face calm, almost smug. She didn't look like a woman who had watched a teenager convulse on the floor. She looked like someone confident the system would protect her. Principal Harris cleared his throat, gesturing for us to sit. Now, I know emotions are running high, but let's try to discuss this calmly. Calmly? My mom snapped. My daughter nearly died. Because this woman locked the door instead of calling for help, Mrs. Green didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned forward, her voice smooth and poisonous. With all due respect, your daughter has a history of exaggerating her condition. I acted in the best interest of the class. I couldn't let her disrupt the entire lesson every time she claims to feel off. I felt my chest tighten. Claims? Did she just call my seizure a claim? Dad slammed his hand on the desk. She flatlined for 90 seconds. The doctors confirmed it. Do you think death is an exaggeration? But Principal Harris raised his hands like a referee. Let's remember, teachers have a responsibility to maintain order. Mrs. Green says she believed it wasn't a real emergency. Perhaps a disciplinary miscommunication. Disciplinary miscommunication. That was their word for it, not negligence. Not abuse, just a miscommunication. I wanted to scream, to tell them how it felt to be locked in, how I could still hear my own classmates whispering if I was dead, how I prayed in my mind for someone, anyone, to care enough to break that door open. But my voice was weak, my throat raw. When I finally spoke, it came out as a whisper. She left me there. Mom's hand tightened around mine. But Mrs. Green's lips curved into a smile so small, so chilling, it made my skin crawl. By the end of that meeting, it was clear. The school wasn't going to punish her. No firing, no suspension, not even a formal apology. Instead, they offered me a solution. If you feel unsafe, Principal Harris said, we can arrange for you to switch classes. That way, there won't be any more conflicts. As if this was some petty argument between me and her. As if my near-death experience was equal to her annoyance at my existence. That night, I cried harder than I had since I was a kid. Not just from fear, but from betrayal. Because I realized something horrible. If people in power chose not to see the truth, then the truth didn't matter. At least not yet. The next few weeks were hell. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some kids said I faked the whole thing for attention. Others joked about me dying in math class. And Mrs. Green, she carried on as if nothing had happened. her authority untouched, her reputation intact. One afternoon, as I walked down the hall, I heard her voice behind me. Calm, almost amused. Careful now. Wouldn't want you to have one of your little episodes in the middle of the hallway. I froze. She wanted me to hear it, and in that moment, something inside me hardened. If the school wouldn't fight for me, I'd have to fight for myself, but I didn't. Realized then just how ugly that fight was going to get. Because the first real betrayal wasn't from Mrs. Green. It wasn't even from the principal. It was from someone I thought was my friend. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, you know the sting lingers longer than any enemy's cruelty. Because enemies you expect it from. Friends, that's a wound that doesn't heal so easily. For years, my closest friend was Emily. We'd known each other since middle school. She was the kind of person who always had perfect hair, a laugh that made people lean closer, and somehow managed to be friends with everyone. I wasn't jealous. Well, maybe a little, but I was grateful. Because while other kids teased me for my seizures, Emily stood by me. Or at least, she used to. The week after the meeting with Principal Harris, when the school practically erased Mrs. Green's guilt, I thought Emily would be my safe space. Someone who would say, "Screw them, I know the truth." But instead, she started acting different. It began with distance, little things at first, not sitting next to me at lunch, pretending she didn't see me wave in the hallway, taking longer to text back, sometimes not at all. I brushed it off, told myself she was busy, stressed, maybe overwhelmed by all the drama surrounding me. But deep down, I felt the shift. Then one day, I found out why. It was between classes. I ducked into the girls' bathroom. And just as I was about to push open a stall door, I froze. Emily's voice, clear as day, talking to two other girls. I mean, it's not like she's dying every day. She makes it seem worse than it is. Honestly, I think she likes the attention. My stomach dropped. The other girls giggled. Yeah, I heard Mrs. Green said the same thing. Maybe she's just dramatic. Emily's laugh joined theirs. A laugh I used to love, now slicing into me like glass. Exactly. And do you know how embarrassing it is to be friends with her right now? Everyone looks at me like I'm part of her pity circus. I stood frozen, my back pressed against the stall door, fighting the urge to vomit. My so-called best friend, my Emily, the one who used to braid my hair before dances, the one who sat with me in the ER after my first seizure at 13, was now tearing me apart to save her own image. I stumbled out of the bathroom before they saw me, my chest tight, vision blurring with hot tears. I barely made it outside before collapsing against the wall, sliding to the ground. Why? Why would she say that? After everything? I wanted to believe she was just scared, that she was trying to fit in, but no excuse could erase the sound of her laughter as she mocked me. That night, I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anyone. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and let the betrayal carve itself into me. Because losing a friend like that, it doesn't just hurt. It rewrites your memories. Suddenly, every kind thing she ever did felt fake. Every smile, every "you'll be okay," every secret we shared. It all turned to ashes. And the worst part? Rumors spread faster now. Because when Emily spoke, people listened. She was popular, respected, believed. So when she echoed Mrs. Green's poison, that I exaggerated, that I enjoyed the attention, it gave the lie power. The next week at school was unbearable. Kids whispered louder when I passed. A note was slipped into my locker, drama queen. Someone even mimicked a seizure in the cafeteria, thrashing on the floor while others laughed. And Emily, she was right there, watching, smiling faintly, not stopping it. One afternoon, I finally confronted her. My voice shook, but I forced the words out. "Why are you doing this to me? I thought you were my friend." Emily's eyes darted away, but she didn't look guilty. She looked annoyed. "Look, I can't deal with your drama right now, okay? You're dragging everyone down. People think you're faking, and honestly, I don't know what to believe anymore. My heart cracked. You were there, Emily. You saw me in the hospital. She crossed her arms. Yeah, well, people change. I don't want to be known as the girl with the seizure friend. Sorry. And with that, she walked away. Just like that, years of friendship tossed aside like garbage. That night, I broke. Really broke. I cried until my body ached, until there were no more tears left. And then, something shifted. If Mrs. Green wanted to destroy me, if the school wanted to erase me, if Emily wanted to betray me, fine. But I wouldn't stay down forever, because a storm was building inside me. A storm that wasn't just pain anymore. It was anger. And that anger was about to push me toward a decision that would change everything. People think the lowest point is when you hit rock bottom. But I've learned that sometimes the lowest point is when you realize no one is coming to save you. That's when something inside either breaks forever or hardens into steel. For me, that night after Emily walked away, that was the breaking point. I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. Mrs. Green's cold stare, the principal's excuses, Emily's betrayal, the laughter in the cafeteria. For the first time in weeks, I stopped crying because I realized something. They all wanted me to stay quiet. Mrs. Green wanted me silent so she could keep her job. The principal wanted me silent so the school wouldn't face scandal. Emily wanted me silent so she wouldn't lose her popularity. And in that silence, I was dying a second death. But what if I refused? What if I made noise so loud they couldn't ignore me anymore? The next morning, I dragged myself out of bed, still pale, still weak, but with fire in my chest. Mum noticed it immediately. Sweetheart, are you sure you're okay to go back today? You look. She hesitated, searching for the word. Determined. I'm fine, I said flatly. I need to do something. She didn't push. She just kissed my forehead and whispered, Then do it, baby. Fight back. At school, I carried something new in my backpack. A spiral notebook, stuffed with printouts and notes I had spent hours gathering from epilepsy support forums online. Stories of kids like me. Statistics about negligence. Articles about schools held legally responsible for ignoring medical emergencies. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet. But I knew one thing. Silence was over. It started small. My first act of defiance wasn't some grand explosion. It was me standing in the cafeteria line, hearing two boys behind me whisper, Careful, she might drop dead in front of the pizza. Normally, I'd have kept my head down, pretended not to hear. But that day, I turned around, met their eyes, and said loud enough for the entire line to hear, At least if I collapse, people will remember me. Can either of you say the same? The cafeteria went silent. One boy stammered. The other turned red. Laughter erupted, but this time not at me. At them. It was small. A crack in the wall they'd built around me. But it felt like breathing again after weeks underwater. The next act was bolder. In English class, when the teacher asked us to prepare a short speech on a topic that matters to you, I stood in front of the room and told them exactly what had happened. I didn't name Mrs. Green directly. I didn't have to. I described the feeling of my body shutting down while an adult stood by. I described what it's like to be whispered about, laughed at, abandoned by people who claim to be friends. And I ended with this. Some of you think this is funny. Some of you think I'm lying. But one day, when it's your life on the line, when you're begging for someone to help, I hope they don't just lock the door and watch you die. Silence. Pure silence. For the first time, I saw guilt in some of their faces. Not all, but enough. That afternoon, Emily caught me at my locker. Wow, that was dramatic, she said, rolling her eyes. Do you have to make everything about you? I shut my locker and looked her dead in the eye. Better dramatic than fake, her smirk faltered. just for a second, and I walked away before she could recover. But anger doesn't just want small victories. It wants war, and mine wasn't satisfied yet. That night, I stayed up late, typing furiously at my computer. I poured everything into an email to the school board, the superintendent, even the local newspaper. I attached my hospital records, the doctor's statement, my parents' account, and then I hit send. My hands shook. My heart pounded. But for the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was fighting. The next morning, the whispers in the hall weren't about me faking anymore. They were about the storm I had unleashed. Did you hear she went to the newspaper? Her parents are suing. What if the teacher gets fired? For once, the spotlight wasn't on my weakness. It was on their guilt. And as I walked through the hallway, still fragile, still hurting, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Power. But storms don't pass quietly, and the retaliation that came next nearly destroyed me all over again. If you think exposing the truth makes people do the right thing, you've never gone up against a system that protects itself. Because the moment I spoke out, the moment I dared to send that email and refuse silence, the claws came out. It started with whispers. Not the same whispers as before. These ones were sharper, nastier, crafted like weapons. She sent the story to the newspaper. Attention seeker. I heard her parents are just trying to cash in on a lawsuit. She's going to ruin the school's reputation. Over what? A fainting spell. By the second week, it wasn't just students. Teachers began looking at me differently. Some avoided eye contact altogether, like I was radioactive. Others were worse. In history class, when I raised my hand to answer, Mr. Collins muttered under his breath, "Always has to make herself the center of attention." Loud enough for the front row to hear. Laughter followed, not from strangers this time, but from classmates I'd known for years. The hardest part wasn't the lies themselves. It was watching people I cared about start to believe them. One night, scrolling through social media, I stumbled across a post from a classmate I thought was neutral. It read, "Funny how some people fake seizures for attention, then cry to the news when a teacher calls them out." Drama queen, my chest tightened. I scrolled down. The post had dozens of likes. Comments too, some from kids I ate lunch with just months ago. And one from Emily. A single laughing emoji. That broke something in me all over again. At dinner, Mum noticed my silence. What happened? I shoved my phone across the table. She read the post, her face paling, her hands trembling with fury. "They're smearing you. They're turning this around like you're the problem." Dad slammed his fork down. "This is character assassination. We're not letting them get away with this." But my voice cracked as I whispered, "What if people believe it?" Because that was my fear. Not the lies themselves, but the possibility that the truth would get buried under them. The retaliation escalated. Anonymous notes stuffed in my locker, crude drawings of me convulsing on the floor. Someone even wrote, "Lock her out," in Sharpie on my desk. And Mrs. Green, she didn't need to say a word. She'd already won half the battle. Her silence, her smug glances from across the classroom told me everything. She knew the tide was shifting back in her favor. The final straw came during an assembly. The principal stood on stage, smiling politely as he addressed the entire student body. As you may have heard, there have been rumors circulating about incidents in our classrooms. I want to assure you that your teachers are professionals, dedicated to your safety and education. Sometimes stories get exaggerated, and while we respect all our students, we also trust our staff. My blood ran cold. That wasn't just a denial. That was a public declaration. We believe her, not you. The room erupted in applause, and for the first time, I realized this wasn't just a fight against one teacher anymore. It was me versus an entire institution. That night, I collapsed on my bed, shaking with anger and despair. How do you fight something this big? I whispered into the darkness. But then, my phone buzzed. A notification from my email. A reply from the local newspaper. We'd like to hear your story. Can you meet with us this week? My heart pounded. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope flicker again. Because maybe the school could smear me inside their walls. But outside, in the real world, the truth was about to be heard. I didn't sleep the night before the interview. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw two images overlapping in my mind. Me convulsing on the floors, and Mrs. Green calmly turning the key in the lock. By the time the sun rose, my body felt heavy, but my resolve was sharper than ever. The meeting was set at a small coffee shop downtown. I remember walking in with Mom, my palms sweating, my chest tight. The reporter, a young woman named Claire, waved us over with a warm smile. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, voice calm, steady. "I know this isn't easy," I nodded, throat dry. For the first time since this all began, someone wasn't doubting me, wasn't brushing me off, wasn't twisting my pain into a joke. She leaned in with genuine interest. "Notebook open, pen ready, start from the beginning," she said softly. And so I did. I told her everything. The first seizure, the laughter, the way my friends drifted away. My voice broke when I described the classroom incident. The locked door, the gasps of students, my own desperate pounding before the darkness swallowed me. Mom added details about hospital visits, the emails we sent, the principal's evasive responses. Claire wrote furiously, her face tightening with anger at certain points. Finally, she asked the question that made my stomach drop. "What do you want to happen?" I looked at her, heart pounding. For weeks I'd wanted revenge. For Mrs. Green to pay, for the school to burn. But sitting there, watching Claire's steady eyes, I realized something. "I want people to believe me," I whispered. "I want people to know I wasn't lying, and I don't want this to happen to anyone else." Claire's pen stilled. She nodded. "That's powerful. That's enough." 2 days later, the article dropped. Front page of the local section. Student claims teacher. Locked classroom during seizure. School denies allegations. My name. My photo. My story. All laid bare for the world to see. The reaction was instant. My phone buzzed non-stop. Messages poured in from numbers I didn't recognize. Some were cruel. "Drama queen. Get over it. Stop ruining careers." But others were different. Strangers shared their own experiences. I was ignored when I had diabetes in class. "My son has epilepsy. This is my worst nightmare. Thank you for speaking up. You're not alone." For the first time I realized I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was speaking for all the kids who had been silenced, laughed at, or dismissed. The school's response was swift and ugly. The principal held a press conference. Cameras flashed as he stood at the podium, polished and rehearsed. "These are serious accusations," he said, "but we stand firmly by our staff. Mrs. Green is a respected educator with years of service. We believe this is a misunderstanding being blown out of proportion." Beside him, Mrs. Green stood tall, face solemn, hands clasped. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The sight of her next to him was enough to paint me as the liar. The backlash was immediate. Some parents demanded action, calling for an investigation. Others accused my family of dragging the school's name through the mud. At the grocery store, I overheard whispers. "Isn't that the girl who fainted for attention? Poor Mrs. Green. Imagine what this is doing to her career." It felt like a war. Half the town defending her, half the town demanding justice. And me, I was stuck in the middle, carrying the weight of both sides on my back. That night, my phone lit up again. This time, it was a direct message on social media. No name, just an account with no profile picture. But the message made my blood run cold. "Stop lying, or you'll regret it." I froze, staring at the screen. Was it a student? A parent? A teacher? I didn't know. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about humiliation anymore. This was turning dangerous. The message replayed in my head all night. Stop lying or you'll regret it. I must have read it 100 times. Fingers hovering over the screen, torn between deleting it and showing it to my parents. My chest felt tight, like the walls of my room were closing in. For the first time, I wondered if speaking up had been a mistake. The next day, things got worse. In the hallway, a group of students I didn't even know brushed past me, one of them whispering just loud enough for me to hear. Regret it yet? I spun around, heart pounding, but they were already laughing, walking away. Later, at lunch, someone slid a folded piece of paper onto my tray. My hand shook as I opened it, scrawled in black marker, "Shut your mouth. Nobody cares." At home, I tried to keep it together. I didn't want to burden Mom and Dad with more stress. But they noticed anyway. "You've barely touched your food," Mom said softly, concern etched into every line of her face. I swallowed hard. It's just, people hate me now. It's not just Mrs. Green, it's everyone. Dad's jaw clenched. Then we'll go to the police. These threats aren't just school drama anymore. But the idea of making it bigger terrified me. They'll say I'm exaggerating again. They'll twist it. They'll make me look crazy. Mom reached for my hand. "You're not crazy. You're brave. Don't let them silence you." Her words should have comforted me. But in that moment, all I felt was exhaustion. That night, I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My eyes were swollen, my face pale, my body trembling. "How much more can I take?" I whispered. I thought about the friends I'd lost. The laughter, the gossip, the way teachers looked at me like I was poison. And now, the threats. It felt like I was drowning. I turned off the light and slid down against the wall, hugging my knees. For a terrifying second, I thought about what it would feel like if I just stopped fighting, if I let the darkness take me for good this time. But then, my phone buzzed. Another message. Not anonymous this time. It was from an old friend I hadn't spoken to in months. Her name lit up my screen. Sophie. The text was short, simple. "I believe you, and I'm sorry I didn't before." Tears blurred my vision. I clutched the phone to my chest, sobbing silently into my knees. Because in that moment, those 5 words pulled me back from the edge. The next morning, Sophie met me outside school. She didn't say much, just slipped her arm through mine and walked beside me. For the first time in months, I didn't feel completely alone. And that tiny spark of hope, it reminded me why I started this fight in the first place. I wasn't just surviving for myself anymore. I was surviving for every kid who'd ever been silenced. But the threats weren't over, and the next one would change everything. The morning after Sophie reappeared in my life, I felt something I hadn't in months. Strength. Not much of it, but enough to get me out of bed without feeling like I was walking into battle alone. When I walked through the school doors, whispers still followed me. Notes still appeared in my locker. But Sophie was there, sitting with me at lunch, walking with me between classes, staring down anyone who tried to laugh. Sometimes one friend is all it takes to shift the weight of the world. But just when I thought maybe I could keep surviving the smear campaign, something unexpected happened. Sophie leaned across the lunch table one day, voice low. "I need to show you something." She slid her phone across to me. On the screen was a video. The thumbnail alone made my stomach drop. Our classroom door. I pressed play with trembling fingers. The shaky footage showed exactly what I remembered. Me, pounding on the locked classroom door, body collapsing in spasms. The terrified gasps of classmates in the background. And then, the camera swung to Mrs. Green, who was standing calmly at her desk. Her face was clear, unbothered, cold. Why didn't you show me this before?" I whispered, tears blurring my vision. Sophie's face twisted with guilt. "I didn't record it. Someone else did. They sent it to me last night. said they were too scared to come forward, but they couldn't keep it hidden anymore. I covered my mouth. The world's spinning. This was it, the proof. That evening, my parents and I sat at the kitchen table, the video playing on repeat. Mom's hands shook as she pressed pause. "This changes everything," she whispered. Dad's eyes burned with fury. "They can't deny this anymore, not with this in the open. But fear not at me. What if they say it's fake? What if they spin it again?" Mom squeezed my hand. "Then we go higher. The school board, the media, whoever it takes. They can smear your name all they want, but they can't erase the truth when it's right there on video." The next day, we sent the footage to Claire, the reporter. Her response came within minutes. "This is huge. I'll verify it, but once it's confirmed, we publish. Are you ready for what comes next?" Was I ready? No, not at all. But I was done being silent. "Yes," I typed back. "Do it." When the article dropped, it wasn't just local news this time. Regional outlets picked it up. The headlines spread like wildfire. Video shows teacher ignoring student's seizure behind locked door. The comments exploded. The same people who once doubted me were now flooding social media with outrage. Not at me, but at Mrs. Green. Unbelievable. She should be fired immediately. How did the school let this happen? For the first time, the tide had turned. At school, the atmosphere shifted overnight. Teachers avoided Mrs. Green in the halls. Students whispered. But now their eyes darted toward her, not me. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a strange new sensation. Power. Because the truth was out. And this time, they couldn't bury it. But I had no idea that the fight wasn't over. The school wasn't about to give up quietly. And neither was Mrs. Green. The real war was just beginning. The day of the hearing, the sky was heavy with grey clouds. It felt like the world knew something monumental was about to happen. My stomach churned as Mom and Dad drove me to the school district building. "This is it," Dad said, gripping the steering wheel. "Remember, speak your truth. Nothing more, nothing less." I nodded, but my hands refused to stop shaking. Inside, the room buzzed with whispers. Parents, teachers, board members, reporters. They were all there. Cameras perched like vultures in the corners. I felt small, exposed. But the video was in my pocket, burning a hole with its truth. Mrs. Green entered last. She was calm, too calm. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and that fake serenity made my blood run cold. "You ready for this?" Sophie whispered from the audience. "As I'll ever be," I muttered. The board called us to speak one by one. I went first. "Good morning," I started, voice trembling. "I am here to tell the truth about what happened in Ms. Green's classroom. On the day of my seizure, she did not help me. I played the video." The room fell into shocked silence. The footage of me struggling on the floor, the locked door, Mrs. Green standing there, cold, indifferent, left everyone stunned. Board members whispered urgently to each other. Reporters scribbled notes frantically. Then it happened. Mrs. Green smirked and stood, confidently. "This video doesn't tell the full story," she said. Her voice was icy. There were other students in the room. Some are willing to testify that the student, she paused, pointing at me, exaggerated the incident. My chest tightened. My hands froze. Sophie grabbed mine under the table. "They can't. They won't." But suddenly, the room's attention shifted. A student, someone I barely knew, stood up from the back. "I saw everything," she said firmly. He didn't exaggerate. Ms. Green ignored him. I tried to call for help myself, but she wouldn't let me leave the desk. Another voice followed. Another. And another. Suddenly the room was filled with truth. Witnesses I never expected were stepping forward, corroborating everything I said. Just when it seemed like the tide had turned completely, betrayal struck. A girl I considered a friend, someone who had always sat with me at lunch, raised her hand. I think Ms. Green didn't do anything wrong, she said, her voice quivering. I mean, he could have. Maybe he should have. Gasps filled the room. My heart sank. I stared at her. Confusion. Hurt. Why? Her eyes dropped. They told me if I testified against her, I'd get into trouble. I didn't know what to do. The board chair's gavel hit the desk sharply. Order! Even with the betrayal, the wave of other witnesses was overwhelming. The board deliberated. The room was tense, so tight you could hear a pin drop. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the chairwoman stood, based on the evidence presented and the corroboration of multiple students. The board has reached a decision regarding Miss Green's conduct. My pulse thundered in my ears. Effective immediately. Ms. Green will be suspended pending a full investigation. Further action will be taken depending on the findings. Relief hit me like a tidal wave. Tears blurred my vision. I wanted to scream, laugh, and collapse all at once. Sophie squeezed my hand. You did it. We did it. But the betrayal left a bitter aftertaste. I realized that even when truth wins, fear and manipulation still linger. I had victory, yes, but trust would have to be rebuilt, slowly, carefully. And as the crowd filed out, whispers followed me again. But this time, they weren't mocking me. They were talking about what happened, about justice, about courage. I finally understood something important. Truth has power, but even when the world sees it, the fight doesn't end. You have to be ready to face the unexpected, even from those you trust most. The day after the hearing, the world felt different. I woke up to texts, messages, even emails from people I barely knew. Words of support, encouragement, and congratulations flooded my phone. But the feeling wasn't entirely light. The betrayal still stung like a fresh wound. The girl who had turned against me, I didn't know how to feel about her yet. Mom hugged me tight as I walked into the kitchen. You were brave, she said softly. No matter what anyone else did, you spoke your truth. That matters, Dad nodded, and people will remember that. But remember, don't let this change who you are. Forgiveness is part of healing too. I swallowed hard. Forgiveness. It felt impossible. At school, things started shifting slowly. Students whispered, yes. But this time, their whispers carried respect, not ridicule. Some came up to me, saying they'd always believed me. Even the teachers who had doubted me quietly offered nods of acknowledgement. I saw her, the girl who betrayed me, standing alone. She avoided my eyes. My first instinct was anger. But then I remembered what Dad said. Forgiveness is part of healing. I walked up to her. I know you were scared, I said quietly. I won't hold it against you, but I hope next time you'll choose differently. She blinked, stunned. I'm sorry. I really didn't know what to do. It wasn't an instant fix, but it was a start. Weeks later, the school board investigation concluded. Ms. Green was permanently removed from her position. Other teachers and administrators underwent mandatory training to ensure no one else would face what I did. Justice had been served. But more than that, I realized something crucial. Courage wasn't just about standing up. It was about continuing. Even when trust was broken, even when fear tried to silence you. I started a small blog about my experience, not for fame, not for attention, but to give a voice to anyone who felt powerless. Messages poured in, students facing neglect, teachers ignoring emergencies, parents feeling helpless. Each story reminded me why I had fought. One evening, Sophie and I sat under the big oak tree behind our school, watching the sunset. Can you believe all this started with one seizure? She laughed softly. I smiled. It started with a moment where I could have given up, but I didn't, and neither did the people who mattered. She nudged me playfully. You're kind of a hero now, you know. I laughed. Maybe, but really, the heroes are everyone who spoke the truth, who stood by me even when it was scary, And in that moment, I understood something powerful. Courage is contagious. Truth is stronger than fear. And even broken trust can be mended, slowly, with honesty, empathy, and forgiveness. Years later, I looked back at that day, not with anger, not with regret, but with gratitude, grateful for the friends who stayed, the strangers who helped, and even the lessons learned from those who betrayed me. Life had tested me in the harshest way possible, and I had survived. Not just survived, I had grown. The world didn't stop being scary, but I wasn't afraid anymore. I had my voice. I had my truth. And that was enough.